However, to Teresa's great astonishment, Luigi remained mute, and not a word escaped his lips the rest of the evening. When the chill of the night had driven away the guests from the gardens, and the gates of the villa were closed on them for the festa indoors, he took Teresa quite away, and as he left her at her home, he said, "Teresa, what were you thinking of as you danced opposite the young Countess of San-Felice?" "I thought," replied the young girl, with all the frankness of her nature, "that I would give half my life for a costume such as she wore." "And what said your cavalier to you?" "He said it only depended on myself to have it, and I had only one word to say." "He was right," said Luigi. "Do you desire it as ardently as you say?" "Yes." "Well then, you shall have it." The young girl, much astonished, raised her head to look at him, but his face was so gloomy and terrible that her words froze to her lips. As Luigi spoke thus, he left her. Teresa followed him with her eyes into the darkness as long as she could, and when he had quite disappeared, she went into the house with a sigh. That night, a memorable event occurred, due, no doubt, to the imprudence of some servant who had neglected to extinguish the lights. The Villa of San-Felice took fire in the rooms adjoining the very apartment of the lovely Carmela. Awakened in the night by the light of the flames, she sprang out of bed, wrapped herself in a dressing gown, and attempted to escape by the door, but the corridor, by which she hoped to fly, was already a prey to the flames. She then returned to her room, calling for help as loudly as she could, when suddenly her window, which was 20 feet from the ground, was opened. A young peasant jumped into the chamber, seized her in his arms, and with superhuman skill and strength, conveyed her to the turf of the grass plot, where she fainted. When she recovered, her father was by her side. All the servants surrounded her, offering her assistance. An entire wing of the villa was burnt down, but what of that as long as Carmela was safe and uninjured? Folks, did you clock the same thing I did in today's passage? I mean, let's acknowledge just what happens here first. Luigi, I can't imagine his jealousy just dissipated the second that he and Teresa got away from everyone. In fact, he asks what Teresa liked about the situation, and Teresa was talking about admiring Carmela's gown, and Luigi hooks into that idea as the thing that is going to bring her back from whatever potential threat he perceives either in the cavalier or the aristocratic life in which she just had a taste of. And certainly, if he did not start the fire, which we will probably find out one way or the other in the coming passages, he's certainly the one who is saving Carmela here, right? We'll find out, I suppose, but there was a single word in today's passage that really threw me through a loop. Did you clock it? I'm going to read part of the sentence in which it appears, and you tell me if you hear it. When suddenly her window, which was 20 feet from the ground, was opened. A young peasant jumped into the chamber, seized her in his arms, and with superhuman skill and strength, conveyed her to the turf of the grass plot. I don't know why the fact that the term superhuman appears in this really captured my attention, because this was written before superheroes and before superpowers. I mean, setting aside the Greek mythology, Roman mythology, religious stuff that comes before this. I think, and I want to go into this because I did some research on the word superhuman and the sentiment behind it. And I just want to acknowledge that I think that why it's so jarring to me is that it really shows how co-opted the word is by pop culture of superheroes and all the Marvel and DC movies and years of comic books, and that the fact that the term superhuman applied in a pre-superhero context felt anachronistic to me. I thought, is there a translation error? I mean, because we're reading the anonymous translation from the 1800s, so even that couldn't attribute it. But it makes sense now. It's more obvious, and it's more just my personal understanding of the word has been so skewed toward modern versions of it that the origins of it have completely disappeared, at least for me. So the idea of superhuman, we're gonna get real push your glasses up your nose about this. Comes from Latin, super meaning above, beyond, humanus equals human, so super above human, beyond human, more human than human if you're a white zombie fan. And it just means beyond human nature. And it appears from my brief research that the word superhuman appears in the English word superhuman appears somewhere in the early 1600s. And it was used more in theological writing to describe divine attributes, to describe grace or virtue beyond ordinary capacity. Sometimes it would describe the endurance of martyrdom. So 200 years before this story, it was being used. So by the time 1844 rolls around, it's pretty conventional vocabulary at this point. But if you think my nerdiness stops there, I did just a little bit more. I went a little deeper because I was curious, well, when does it go from being a kind of theological descriptor to a kind of literary metaphor? Meaning, when does it stop describing the divine, and when does it start becoming more common language for stuff like this that we are seeing today? And again, I would love to talk to a scholar to learn the specifics of this. But from what I was briefly able to find, it looks like roughly 100 years after it starts appearing in theological writing, by the early 1700s-ish, maybe the late 1600s, it starts appearing in political writing, in commentary. By the mid-1700s, it appears in travel writing, military accounts, descriptions of physical endurance by individuals, not in a religious context. It appears in literary criticism, and started to become a way to describe something so extraordinary that it just exceeds ordinary human capacity. Not divinely, but just beyond what the average Joe could do. Well, more than that, but you get my meaning. So by the time Dumas rolls around, you can see with things like the Romantic movement how descriptors like that would be almost too good to pass up. You want to evoke emotion, you want to evoke melodrama, you want to evoke high emotion, and you're going to seek for words that over-exaggerate your point. He's not literally superhuman here. He appears to be superhuman through his actions. And that is describing an experience that Carmela is having when what seems impossible, the windows opening, 20 feet off the ground, and someone jumps in like Batman, scoops her up and safely puts her on the grass below. That doesn't seem humanly possible. Clearly it is possible because the superheroes don't exist in this story so far as I know, but we're only a quarter of the way through. So it's a way to express someone's experience and emotions and feelings and thoughts, rather than describing them literally and logically. That's going to make me look at the language Dumas is using to see if there are any other words that have a sort of romanticism application. Because I bet there's a ton of terms that come up during this period that kind of amplify their meaning and shift their meaning a bit. The second that you're able to apply a new term to something we all experience but never had a word or a phrase for, it's going to enter the modern lexicon and just shape the way we talk to one another. I think that's one of the big, powerful things that writing can do. Anyway, thank you for going on this journey with me, this incredibly nerdy journey, today's episode. Let's find out what happens to Carmela tomorrow. I'm sure she's safe, and will we find out what happened to the man who saved her? Is it a man? I shouldn't have assumed it was a man. Shame on me. Shame on me. I'm going to carry my shame into tomorrow's episode, so join me here then. Okay, goodbye. The Countdown of Monte Cristo is part of the Gruntwork Podcast Network. This show is produced, edited, and hosted by Landon Solano. The original text of The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. Theme song by Magic Solo. If you want to support the show and others like it, visit patreon.com/gruntworkpod. Thank you for listening. See you tomorrow.